Next up is if you wanted to actually see how this integration works with your application. I'm going to switch over to another environment that has a different policy in it. This one's got some conditions in, so you can imagine a bit more developed. We have this new tab on the right called Implement, and this is going to show you, firstly allow you to see what the API between your application and your policy decision point would need to be. And we support being able to see both the check resource and the plan resources for the different use case. So check resource is a simple check to see whether an action should be allowed or denied. Inside of this interface, you can define which principle, which resource, and which action from your test fixtures you want to see, if there's any auxiliary data as well. And then on the left, you have the payload request coming from what your application would send. And on the right is what comes back from the policy decision point, the Cerbos PDP, with that authorization decision. So in this case, it's an allow. If I go over to a different action, so I'm going to clear my actions up here. I'm going to go and, oh, my loom is in the way, apologies. I'm going to say for the approve action, this action is currently allowed. If I go to a different user, this action is now actually going to be denied. So we can actually see for different users, for different resources, for different principles, we can see what that message that goes between your application and the PDP would be. Obviously, our SDKs make it much easier to work with this, but if you wanted to see what the underlying details are, this UI gives you insight into that. Where it's actually more useful is around with a query plan. So Cerbos has the ability to generate a set of query criteria for a principle, an action, and a resource kind. And this is where the data structure is actually quite important because it defines what the conditions will be for your application. So I'm going to go and look at a particular user here. This user Derek. I'm trying to view an expense resource type. And my policy says that this user Derek should always be able to view a expense resource. So the response that comes back from the PDP and the query plan isn't always allowed. Now, if I go over to a user that has some conditions, what we can see now is what that AST, what that abstract syntax tree of conditions is, that's coming back. So here we have a conditional response. So for Sally to view an expense, the owner ID attribute of the resource must be equal to Sally in this case, so the ID, the principal making the individual request. So this view is really great for really getting your mental model right around how query plans work inside of Cerbos and your application, and also great for kind of debugging. And you can pull in principles or resources inside of your playground and actually see what those conditions would be. And these can get very expressive and very detailed. And this view gives you the ability to work directly on that, and you can go and dynamically change these values and get different responses as you start tweaking and tuning things.